Chef Mike Marina.
Indeed. What's going on, man?
Nice to meet you, brother. So, man, just give me a little background, like how you got to here in the city, like how you started being a chef, what created the love for food.
Stuff. It all really comes back to my family, really and truly. Like, I'm the only professional chef in my family, technically. Found this out later that my great-grandfather had a brother who was a chef. But other than that, like, my family's kind of like blue-collar to white-collar folks. My mom's an actress. My grandmother was a computer programmer and stuff. And my great-grandfather was a laborer. He worked in Ohio, actually. That's where my family's based. Nice. But the thing is about my family is that we all cook. My great-grandmother was a super baker. My grandmother is a baker. My mom cooks. My family, they all cook. And it's kind of funny because we all have weird things. Like, my grandmother can't have fake salt. My mom is allergic to fake cheese. And I can't really, like, fake sugars and stuff like that tastes like metal to me. And so a lot of the recipes that we made, it was like real cakes, it was real food. Like, I didn't know what Kraft macaroni and cheese tastes like till I was like 12 years old. Right. Because we couldn't have it. So there was always cooking in my family, and I always kind of gravitated towards that because I like to eat, obviously. So, but what made me want to be a chef was that, like, as a kid, like, I was always into the arts, but I always liked to move. Yeah. And I knew that, like, whatever I wanted to do, I wanted it to be active. Like, sitting at a desk never really appealed to me. Right. So, and I liked science. And it wasn't until I saw Alton Brown's Good Eats.
Hell yeah.
And that show, and watching him talk about the science behind food, specifically, it was an episode he did about pocket pies, where he made, like, his own, like, Pop-Tarts using biscuit dough.
I saw that one. It was great.
Dude, like, talk about, like, that was, like, the moment. I was like, I could do that. And I'm in my grandma's kitchen in Ohio, rolling out my own biscuit dough, filling it, scrambling eggs, cooking bacon and stuff, and making my own pocket pies. Because I had to get up, and I would, like, heat those up and walk to school. Yeah. And so it was what I did. My grandma was like, cool. My mom was like, this is awesome. I don't have to get up and make you breakfast. And so that's kind of like where it started. And then, but also, like, my family's very big on education. And I'm kind of a nerd myself, hence the glasses. So I knew I wanted to go to school. And I found Johnson & Wales University in Charlotte, North Carolina. Went there, met a few of the chefs there, and kind of fell in love with the campus. Fell in love with their library. Yeah. Walked in, and it's a big building full of glass and just like wall-to-wall cookbooks on food, history, like France, Finland, Japan, Africa, anywhere, like South America, anywhere where people ate at a table, there was some sort of documentation about it.
Like dreamer's heaven.
Dude, and like coming from, like, when I went to college, like, the only cooking job I had was working at Panera Bread.
Right.
So, like, I hadn't seen fresh basil till I was a freshman there.
Right.
So it was like, I knew that I was going in there with other people who had, like, years of just, like, industry knowledge. I knew that I was behind. So I knew that when I saw the library, I was like, I can really get a lot of knowledge here. Sure. So when I was at Johnson & Wales, I spent a lot of time at the library, and then I worked in the storeroom there. And that kind of, like, those two things really expanded the food world to me. Because when you worked in the storeroom as a work study, you filled the requisitions for each class. The chefs, it's like, essentially the storeroom was just like the main purveyor for all the classrooms. The chefs would send out a requisition that would say, I need, like, 15 pounds of butter, this much flour. You would put it on a big old speed rack and send it up to them on an elevator. Mm-hmm. So in that, though, I was able to learn, like, what different cheeses taste like, what different herbs looked like, what they smelled like. So I was, like, able to see, like, different cuts of meat and how we processed it all. And I was just, like, coming from a kid who thought, like, all basil and, like, tarragon and stuff came in, like, a little McCormick jar.
Yeah.
To be able to see all that was just mind-boggling. Yeah. So how'd I end up in New Orleans?
So you were born in Ohio?
Yes, originally I was. And then I moved down here. So it was just my mother and I growing up. And my mom got a job teaching theater at Dillard University. So we moved down here in like 2003 or so. So we are pre-Katrina babies. I feel like if I had a Katrina cross on my house, I'm official. I put in the time. But yeah, I went to middle school and high school down here. Katrina hit when I was in my sophomore year of high school. Then I went back up to Ohio to finish while my mom was down here because it wasn't really I went to a public school, but like being down here immediately post Katrina, like the year or so afterwards, would not have been healthy for me.
Right.
So in high school, I was in Ohio. My mom and I kind of split time. It was a interesting time because I grew up a lot because my mom was spending like 2 or 3 weeks out of the month down here teaching. And that meant that, like, we had our own apartments. I mean, like, not only did I have to cook for myself, but I'd, like, get myself to my job. I learned how to drive. Like, I learned how to drive out of necessity of being independent. And so that kind of, it helped me out when I moved back down here after college.
Mm-hmm.
I moved back in with my mom for a little bit. That didn't last too long. Love my mom. We're not good roommates. And I started working at Manning's on Fulton Street.
Okay.
And that was an intense experience. Manning's was probably the most high volume restaurant I've been in, and it wasn't even like that crazy high volume. But on like I think the busiest Saturday we did like 900 to like 1,000 covers.
Hey, that's busy.
Yeah, like
Any
it was
any cook's experience. Yeah.
man. I remember walking into that place. I worked the saute station, and like it was like the dude walked in, and my dude was 20 tickets deep. And he just looked at me with like this wild look in his eye. He's like. And I'm like, shit. So we switch out, and he's just like, I'm gonna prep you up, dude. I'm gonna be here for 2 more hours, and I'm gonna prep you up, but you gotta maintain this. And like, I cooked my ass off that whole night and just stayed 20 tickets deep until like 10 minutes before we closed. Yeah, Manning's was, I met a lot of cool people at Manning's, but Manning's in and of itself was a real meat grinder.
Yeah.
That was probably where I saw, like, when people talk about cooks burnout, that was like my first introduction to that. Not personally, but because Manning's was a really intense place to be. It was also kind of a corporate kitchen because Manning's was independently owned, but the lot that we stayed on was rented from Harrah's Casino. So we were subject to a lot of the things that Harrah's did, like their tiers of guests. For example, their highest tier of guests is called a 7-star. And these people gamble like $250,000 a year, something crazy like that. Like, these folks have money to literally burn.
Yeah.
I'll put it like this. A 7-star once came into a restaurant, asked for 16 ribeye steaks off our menu, black and blue style, not because they were hungry, but because they wanted more steaks to put on their private jet for the flight home. Didn't go to a grocery store, went to a restaurant, bought them at the upcharge of a restaurant, just so they could put them on a private jet. And like, these guys could call Manning's, and this has happened before. We were like 5 minutes to close, and if you're a 7-star, you can call us, and we would have to stay open. Say like, hey, I'm coming down with a group of 7 people. We had to stay open.
Damn.
So, but also where I got to cater when the Super Bowl was held in New Orleans.
Nice.
I was working that. That was really crazy because we had to rent a full-size semi-truck. Full-size refrigerated semi-truck to hold all the food that we were serving, because we closed the restaurant for regular service and we're just cooking food for the folks running the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So then I met up with a cool guy named Mike Nierenberg, and I started working at a smaller hotel restaurant called Tivoli and Lee, and that was a blast. Tivoli and Lee was probably between Mike Nierenberg, Cornelius Singer, and Marcus Woodham. Marcus Woodham is actually a guy, he went on Chopped. He actually won an episode of Chopped. That was probably like my most, talking about a kitchen that was fun and like fishing where I learned, that was it. It was a farm-to-table restaurant. There used to be a farmer's market around here called Holly Grove Market. That was probably one of the best things I've seen in New Orleans. Locals Farmers Market got all their produce from like local Gulf State areas. Had a thing called the box where like for $25 you can get like 2 bags worth of fresh groceries.
Nice.
Accepted like SNAP cards, people on food stamps and things like that could get fresh vegetables, which is really cool for me to watch. But we were their partners. So it was a farm-to-table restaurant, so I got to see even more so like, here's how we make head cheese, because Chef Wooden's cousin works for Two Run Farms and got us a pig's head. So I worked in the mornings there. I was the breakfast cook, and I also baked like biscuits and things like that. So it'd be like 4 o'clock in the morning. I would be working, get a knock on the back of the restaurant, and there's a dude there with a big old cooler with a hog's head in it, and I got to pay him cash, that sort of thing. Right. But then like Marcus Woodham would come in and just be like, hey, we're making head cheese. Throw the trotters into this big old pot. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And so I learned so much. My sous chef, C, he was an incredible guy to work for. He and I would clash sometimes. That's because I also have an attitude, but he was a really cool guy, and just he really pushed me to be like precise with my cooking. Like if Manning's taught me to be like how to do like 40 plates fast, C taught me how to do 40 plates pretty and do them fast. And like it was a small crew. There's only like 5 or 6 of us total, but everybody was really cool. And just like, even again, like we were on the route for Mardi Gras because we were in the middle of what was formerly known as Lee Circle. And so for like Mardi Gras, we were all there listening to DMX, just doing a bunch of just like banquet food for the people in the bandstands. And so it was a really cool crew. Then I got I was a little broke. So I went to another restaurant called Mila for the Renaissance Pear Marquette. And that's where I went as a lead line cook, and I started moving up a little bit more in management. And that's where I kind of started pushing myself.
Yeah.
My head chef there was a really cool guy, but my sous chef, he was kind of like the more person that I dealt with personally. And then that was the first time I was like actively in charge of other cooks. And it was a learning experience for me about management style and what I have to do better. But it was also a lot of fun because Mila was like the most beautiful kitchen I've worked in. And they had things there like full French tops and like twin, like 2 like convection ovens and Paco jets and deep freezers, and just like we got in a thing of like Louisiana strawberries. We got in a thing of fresh Louisiana strawberries that we were serving like a salad. Only served like 2 cartons out of a full flat. I took the rest of them, cooked them down, and made like fresh Louisiana strawberry ice cream that I like would blend in the Paco jet. And I did like vanilla, like a simple, it was like a super thin like vanilla cake that like crumbled it up, so it was just like a vanilla ice cream cone, like in a bowl of fresh like Louisiana strawberries. So it was delicious. And so like Mila was where I got to really play. And then my buddy Zach was a lead server at a place called Santa Fe, and that's where I became an exec chef. That's where everything kind of crashed and burned for me for a while. That's when I reached my personal burnout stage, and abruptly quit. And I was at the point where I was like, I don't need to put another pan to another stove again. And at the time, I was doing spoken word. That's where I met G, our mutual friend. And at a show I was performing at, one of the producers works for the New Orleans Public Library and was just like, hey, we're looking for folks. You have a degree. You have a college degree. Put in an application, and I did. And I did that for about a year. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I slowly started cooking for myself. Like, I was done with cooking.
Now, what were you doing at this job?
At the library?
Yeah, you're just
library work. I was just doing library work. I was working with kids.
Nice.
That was always been kind of a thing that I enjoyed. When I was at Johnson & Wales, I ran what we called Chef's Choice, which was like cooking classes that the instructors would hold for adults. I ran Kids' Chef's Choice. Nice. So if you had a kid, you would go to your Chef's Choice, and I would be working with your son or daughter or whatever. And so, like,
that's really cool, man.
Yeah,
kids, man, they're just so honest, and
they
are. To learn and try everything.
It's one of my favorite cooking moments. We were running a summer camp for quote unquote at-risk youth, and that was just like the title at risk in Charlotte was like their income level, but had nothing to do with the behavior. Yeah. It's like these kids came in and like they were just hungry to learn. Yeah. And so I remember we were making macaroni and cheese, and I was teaching them how to make a Mornay sauce. Mm-hmm. So and they were like, "Oh, I made macaroni and cheese. I made it from a box." And like we were looking at the recipe, they're like, "Where's the cheese powder?" And I'm like, "We're not doing cheese powder." So I taught them how to make a roux, and then like we added in the milk, and then we started adding the shredded cheese. They're like, "This looks really good." I was like, "How do you know if it's good?" They looked at me like quizzically, and I'm like, "Y'all, we gotta taste it." They're like, "We get to taste it?" And I'm like, "A little bit at a time." Right. But like there was these cool moments of just showing these kids like, here's what happens when you add a little bit of salt. Taste it. What does it taste different about it? It tastes kind of salty. Do you think we added too much or too little? I think we added the right amount. What happens if we add a little bit of lemon? I don't like lemons. We'll try it though. Let's squeeze a little bit of lemon into it. And just talk about how like adding different things gradually would change stuff. Best time of my life, dude.
Hell yeah.
Like best time. Even like when I'm in New Orleans, I would work with we have a place called the Cultural Arts Center. Mm-hmm. and they have a thing called the arts camp during the summer. And I would teach a cooking class. It's actually the best part. I would teach a cooking class, but I would be in a boardroom. So it would just be a long table, and I would have a bunch of electric burners set up and plugged into a wall.
Right.
But I would teach a cooking class for like 2 weeks, and it would be based on books. And so, like, there was one where I did a with the younger kids. We learned about taste sensations and how, like, this is what bitterness tastes like, and how does that change recipes and things like that. And then I had older kids who knew all that. So instead, we were like, this is what happens when we take a basic recipe and put our own spin on it. So there was one day where we did like taco day, where I had like a bunch of, I made like basic pico de gallo. Like literally it was like tomatoes, red onion, bell pepper, cilantro, lime, salt, pepper.
Yeah.
Like they had basic pico de gallo. They all tasted it. They're like, okay, this is fine. Nothing special. But I brought in everything from like peach jam, mango preserves, habanero, smoked paprika, garlic, mustard, ketchup, barbecue sauce.
Right.
And I'm like, everybody, here's the basic recipe. I want you to make your personal favorite salsa. We're all going to try them, and I want everybody to talk about what they did and why they did it. And then we just spoke about how people like different tastes and how they tried different things. And it culminated in them doing an Iron Chef challenge where they had to make their own chicken wing sauce. And then whoever won, I served their sauce with a whole bunch of chicken wings for a big showcase we had at the end of the week.
Nice.
So I've always worked with kids, and it's always been kind of like my secondary kind of like, all right, if I break my leg or something like that, I can hop in a wheelchair and be a teacher. I'll be happy with that.
Right.
You know, it's always good to have a plan B.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started working with kids at the library, and I was cooking for myself. I was cooking for the girl I was dating. And then there was one day where she invited a bunch of friends over, and I was cooking for everybody. And everyone was like, Michael, you're a great cook. What made you stop cooking? I told them, how I got burnt out and tired. And like, I'll never forget it. There was a point where I was doing nothing but like working, sleeping, and thinking about work.
Yeah.
And then like the girl I was dating like checked in with me and said, Mike, I'm worried about you. You're bleeding tension. My mom checked in. Like there was 3 days where every single person I cared about checked in with me and was worried about me. And I'm like, okay, obviously.
Signal.
Yeah, big messages. Like there's a problem here. And so fast forward, I'm cooking for folks now, just casually.
Yeah.
And folks are like, you really should think about this. And I'm like, but I'm wounded. I'm hurt. I don't know. And so a friend of mine asked me to cook for her husband's anniversary, like their marriage anniversary. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And she and I were talking, and they spoke about like their favorite things and how like they really like banana pudding and things like that. And I was like, yeah, I could do a menu. That'll be fine. And that's when I started talking with G about doing a private chef business. And now I work at the library, and I run a full private catering, private chef business full time. And I kind of like reacclimated myself to cooking now. And it's been like this weird like rebirth. It's been really cool. But yeah, so instead of, because I just realized what it was that for me personally, like as much as I love kitchen work and I like being in the kitchens, I like talking with chefs, and I love talking with cooks, but like cooking in a full professional kitchen just doesn't appeal to me, because for me, I like the intimacy about food.
Yeah.
There's something to be said. Like I can respect every single chef that puts out consistent, beautiful plates every Friday, Saturday, every day.
Yeah.
You know, I have so much respect for that craft because I know what it takes. But personally, that's not where my passion is. And if you're not passionate about it, find that shit out really fast.
Right.
But for me, it's like when somebody messages me and just be like, hey, my fiance and I have been trying Thai food. I see that you've studied Thai, Pan Asian cuisine. I would like to do an anniversary dinner. I'd really like to try, seafood curry. Could you come up with something for us?
Yeah. Sure.
And then I'm in their home. They're all dressed up. We set the table. I have specialty menus printed on cardstock for them with their names, the date, the whole menu that they designed right there. And I just cook for them.
Now, do you think that whole style of cooking where you go into people's homes, you think that's like a quintessential New Orleans thing, Louisiana thing? Because it's not necessarily common around the U.S.
It could be.
It could be. It does happen.
It really could be like a Southern hospitality thing. And that could be something that I picked up from my mom and my grandma, because I know my mom especially, she is the entertaining queen. Mm-hmm. That woman, Martha Stewart's famous because she got to it first. My mom could put her to shame. Just saying, no shade.
Yeah.
But it is like a Southern thing, especially in New Orleans. Like, it's hard to go to somebody's house and not have them at least offer you food.
Right.
If you're not there to eat. And, like, it's a rule. If you go to somebody's house for a cookout, you got to bring something.
Right.
Even if you can't cook, and we know you can't cook, and you bring some plates, cool. You bring a bag of chips, cool. You got the ones with the lime sprinkled on it, you are good. But but yeah, I do think it's part of. It's definitely something that I learned, because oftentimes, like, one of my best friends, her name is Shadow. Her dad's a chef, and Shadow and I will cook together often, and just on a lark, just be like, hey, I'm making beef roast. You should come over and try it. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I've been working on a new kind of ricotta cheese. Let's talk. And we'll come over. She'll trade me some beef roast. I'll give her some ricotta cheese. We'll sit on her porch and just talk. And it's like watch kids like practice the trumpet and stuff outside.
Nice.
You know, it's very. I think it's, if not a New Orleans thing, it's a very Southern thing to kind of like use food to create memories, and that's really like what my personal mission is.
Nice.
Because a lot of my favorite moments are around food. Like, one of the best meals I had was with it was me, one of my best friends who passed away as soon as we graduated. His name is Chuck. My friend Liesel and her roommate Jessica, and we had just finished moving Liesel into her new apartment, and they had bought a bunch of oak furniture. And Chuck was this 6 foot tall, 250, like, big old corn-fed Texas dude who was also a baker. So if you imagine a dude built like a Zamboni putting together like a starfish made out of pink sugar, like, that was Chuck.
Nice.
Like, the biggest teddy bear ever, but also like a big dork, like a good friend of mine. Like, easily like one of my best friends. We had just finished moving this heavy fucking furniture into this apartment, and Liesel's family was Filipino. And so when we got there, like, when we finished everything, they covered their coffee table with newspaper, and her mom and her dad like brought over like fresh made lumpia, fresh boiled blue crabs, cut watermelon, jasmine rice, and chicken adobo, just plates of it. And we all sat down. We had like cold beer and water, and like these big points of food, and we were just ravenous.
That makes my mouth water right there.
Dude, like, and we were just like laughing and talking, and there was a point where we were just like, oh God, oh, rice, oh, chicken. And like, Lisa's showing me how to clean a blue crab, because I've never done it before. Chuck's laughing at me, getting it wrong, with a big old crab claw in his mouth, with like watermelon juice running down his face. And like, that's probably like fine dining, nah, but like that feeling right there, that's real, and that's what I like to create with my food.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt that like I had to get out of the kitchen to realize that, because originally I thought that like being in a professional kitchen was the only way I had to do it, and it wasn't true.
Yeah, you don't get that feeling of like camaraderie and, like, for lack of better words, like a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
You know, in a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you do, but it's rare.
It's rare.
Very rare.
But at the same time, like, I remember the faces of everybody that I worked with. Even when I was at Manning's, like, the nighttime crew, we were so tight with each other.
Yeah.
Like, we were really cool. Because, like, the same people worked Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday mornings. And we would get out, like, Saturday nights, like, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, have to be back for 7. And there was one point where one of the sous chefs quit. And so the nighttime crew kind of ran itself. So we started to cross-train each other on each other's stations, because at the time the ventilation system wasn't really working. So we would be like, so if I was on saute, I was also trained on fryer, grill, and flat top. So if anybody else there had to be like, yo, I got to take 5 and cool off, they would walk into the cooler. We had a bin of rags that were just soaked in ice water. They would walk to the cooler, put that rag on their neck, take 5. I would hop on their station. The pantry station, which normally ran 2 people, would have somebody hop onto my spot, and we could keep on flowing without losing anybody.
That's hardcore, man.
Yo, but that's how but like that feeling of community was real. Yeah. And so, and then like Sunday mornings, we would all like, half of us be like stumbling in from the bar that we passed out at the night before. Admittedly, I didn't do that. Hi, Mom. But we would come in, and like 2 of us would make breakfast for everybody. and we would like blast the salamanders, so the whole place was so like sweat and alcohol as we all like kind of got right and fought through our hangovers because we had to cook for like Sunday football. And so like I wanted to take like those moments and like give them to other people. And sometimes folks are just like, you know, I can't afford like a 4-course steak dinner at, you know, I don't know, Ruth Chris or somewhere like that. Like they can't afford it. And so sometimes I'll lower my prices and be like, look, everyone deserves a little bit of luxury. Especially when folks are doing it for a loved one. It's like, everyone deserves that. And everyone deserves those moments of just like eating, laughing, and looking at a person that they care about, and just being able to facilitate that makes me happy that I didn't quit cooking, period.
Right.
You know? And now I've been doing that, and I've been starting to cook on yachts as well.
Oh, nice.
And that's been a lot of fun. The money's a little bit better, but but it's also its own challenge, which is really interesting.
So are you like real busy with cooking, or do you like advertise yourself, or?
I do advertise myself. I have my own website. I have my own Instagram channel, which has like a good following. Chef Mike Marina at everything: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, what have you. If I'm on the net, it's about food, and it's me, Chef Mike Marina. But it takes up a lot of my time. And now, because can't sit still. I like doing things. I also, not only do I do my own business, but also like moonlight. I met a guy, actually, he called it like being a cook mercenary.
Yeah.
And so because in New Orleans, we have a big like pop-up food truck community here.
Right.
Like people will do pop-ups at bars, run their own food trucks. One of my friends, actually I have 2 sets of friends who run amazing establishments, 3 really. One of them is one of the best food trucks around, no bias, by the name of Bonafide Food Trucks. They do fried chicken sandwiches. That's run by my friends Steve and Rebecca. They're a husband and wife duo, and they do amazing food.
Nice.
Then I work at Fry and Pie, which is run by my friends Nick and Kristen Guile. Also another husband and wife duo. They do like loaded fries. So imagine like poutine to the ultimate level. Like my favorite one there is called the Thai Fighter. So it's fries with mozzarella provolone cheese, roasted chicken covered in like gochujang with Thai peanut sauce on it and pickled veg.
God.
Yeah, it's nuts. One recently there is called Duck Side. It's sharp cheddar cheese, duck confit, caramelized onions, roasted mushrooms with red wine demi-glace on top.
That's in a food truck.
That's a pop-up.
Okay.
Actually, that's behind a bar. And then 2 of my friends, they do their own pop-up. They're called Black Swan. They do like really healthy soul food, like Thai and Caribbean inspired stuff. And that's run by a really awesome duo, Nikki and Shayna, who are also really incredible folks. And so I go around helping them a lot. And that's also fun because then I'm cooking with my friends again.
Oh, yeah.
And we're doing really awesome food. And I've kind of gotten back into finding my own stride by just like doing my own thing. And that's been like the best part. Like I've had more joy cooking within like the past couple of years than I had for like my first 8.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, just doing your own thing, doing what you want to do.
Yeah, doing what I want to do and like helping my friends out, but also like really focusing on like instead of cooking for a paycheck, like the question that I just like presented to myself was like, what do I want my food to do at the end of the day? Like paychecks are important. We all got bills, and that's real. That's why I haven't quit the library yet.
Sure.
But I swear to God, let me get on with a really wealthy family. I like what I do. I get to work with cool people, and I serve awesome food. And I get to meet like New Orleans. New Orleans is a city, but its relationships are like a town. So no matter who you are, you're about maximum 3 degrees of separation from another person. So I can post on Facebook, just be like where I'm cooking like that day, and my friends will show up like in droves. Just be like, I saw you were cooking at the Bonafide Food Truck. Hey, what's up? You want some chicken?
That's great.
Yeah, so it's great because I get to just see everybody and meet folks and just give folks good food.
Yeah.
You know, that's been the journey. It's been not just like what am I cooking for like myself, but like what am I giving out, which I think is a good question for folks to ask themselves.
Absolutely. Like, what are you getting out of eating this food? You know,
Right.
Are you happy, or are you just trying to get?
Are you just trying to get by?
Fix a hunger, or
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and like sometimes it's real. You do eat to get fed. But at the same time, if you can get fed and also like have an experience, it's special.
Oh, man. That's what it's all about.
You know?
So I know it's kind of a cliche question, but do
Yeah.
you have like a favorite type of food or?
Oh yeah. It's kind of that's a hard question. Favorite kind of food for me to eat will always be some variant of Asian food.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Iowa City for a couple of years when my mom was getting her master's, and a few of my friends were from like Beijing, South Korea, and Taiwan, respectively. So like, as I was growing up in like fourth grade, my mom was cooking like regular like American fare, soul food type stuff. But then I would go to like my friend's house for a birthday, and we're watching Pokemon, eating like bao, like barbecue pork, like steam buns.
Mm-hmm.
And so like them joints will always be like my comfort food for sure.
Yeah.
To cook, I'm trained in French. That's normally like my go-to. I actually really like Italian and Mexican cuisines. On Sundays when I had my own apartment and I had my own place, like my Sunday like meditative thing, like everyone has a thing I feel like when they cook that they just like to do.
Yeah.
And some folks it's like mincing mirepoix, some folks like cleaning like legs of lamb or whatever. For me, it's rolling pasta, like making pasta dough,
Nice.
getting out the hand crank roller, and just like rolling out like regular pasta dough, like that. I could do that all day and just be happy. So I'll just like put on Stevie Wonder
Yeah.
and be rolling out sheets of pasta dough and like cutting it into like ravioli and fettuccine and angel hair and just like storing it in bags and just having it. So I could just like, because it cooks, like fresh pasta cooks in no time.
Right.
So it'd just be like, I would just make it on a Sunday and just have it. So I could get home, like take some chicken, toss it in a pan with some onions and some noodles and just yakisoba there,
Beautiful.
like real quick.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah. So I'm kind of like I'm a smattering of different types of cuisines.
Yeah.
I love New Orleanian like Cajun cuisine. Though granted, I will say this. I love eating in New Orleans. But if you want real Cajun cuisine, you need to go to Lafayette.
Mhm.
The etouffee and like the Cajun traditional dishes that I've had there are in depth of flavor like miles beyond
Right.
because they don't hold back there.
Mhm.
New Orleans in general, because it's a tourist town, and I get it,
Yeah.
they kind of ease up on the cayenne a bit, but like the depths of flavor that you get in Lafayette and like Scott, Louisiana, and the history of it, you really get like you really see like the real like French, Native American, and like African influences on the cuisine in a really cool way.
Yeah.
So I do have that tip for anybody traveling. Like if Cajun cuisine is what you're looking for, let New Orleans be your starter. Then start branching out. Lafayette and Scott, definitely for Boudin. Make sure you hit those cities. And like it's always the little mom and pop shop. So it looks like somebody's grandma's in the kitchen, get there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way to do it.
People don't know that kind of stuff. Like people that aren't like they've never worked in the service industry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't. They always go to the nicest place.
Yeah,
And they
man.
don't realize that's not where the nicest food
It's
is.
not. My God. It's never true. It's never true.
Like, just think about it. Like, if your grandma was the best cook you ever knew, so go where there's a grandma cooking.
Where there's a grandma cooking.
Yeah.
And I've been there. And there's like, I looked in the kitchen and there's this old lady and she looked like 60 something years old, gray bob with a hairnet. She was smoking a cigarette. And she was mixing up, I think she was mixing up like boudin patties or something. She had a big old bowl and she was speaking in French to the cooks. And I was like, I was in Lafayette at the time and I was like, I'm in love. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And so the waiter came by, I was with my girlfriend and her aunt, and I was like, what is that woman making? They're like, oh yeah, it was like sausage. I was going to be on a biscuit. And I was like, I want whatever she has her hands in.
Right.
I want that.
Mm-hmm.
Best food in my life.
Oh man.
Like, yeah. I'm reading a lot of books more on like the basis of like Southern soul food and trying to trace that history back to Africa. Just out of like my own interest, because I like food history is so fascinating to me as like a little bit of a side point, and especially like in New Orleans we have a museum. It's called the Southern Food and Beverage Museum. If you ever got a free time, do check it out.
I would do that.
Because it shows like the food history of like the Gulf area specifically, and because New Orleans was a port city and was owned by like the French, I think it was owned by the Spanish. Sorry, Louisiana history is not my forte. And then bought by the U.S., you get a real like there's so many cultures represented here. Even like the way, like the New Orleanian technique of like cooking red beans and rice is like a mixture between like French and like Caribbean and like Central American recipes.
Yeah.
Like in and of itself, it's a combination of stuff. And then like gumbo itself is a traditional French stew cooked with African ingredients.
Yeah.
And so one thing I've been working on personally, just kind of like as part of like something I want to put into my repertoire as a little bit more confident, is like going through the history of like the Gulf Coast and tracing it through, admittedly, like the slave trade and things like that, and trying to find its roots in Africa and India and other areas of the world.
Yes.
Because like I feel like that's how you understand like how recipes work, is to understand the history behind it. And I think it's always so just like really cool to be like,
Oh man.
oh, that's how they figured that out. Like, you know, like nobody like came up with gumbo, and like even today, people are just like, oh, soul food, it's so heavy, it's so rich and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you know, people talk about it because they'll eat soul food for like 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
But the people who originated that cuisine weren't eating 3 meals a day. They're eating like one.
They had to have
for
a
every
big
like
bowl, a lot of
of
calories.
something,
Yeah.
or it's like something that they could put on and be gone for 8 hours and come back and have it be ready, or it's scraps of something that they had or got and then had to make that up with whatever they had on hand. And so a lot of it's like this weird, like in the moment impromptu stuff for survival
Yeah.
that in the time itself is terrible, it's still great. But I think if we understand the roots of it, then we can kind of start to innovate with it and make it into its next iteration.
Oh man.
You know?
That's how chefs communicate.
Yeah,
with food
dude.
and people.
Yeah.
Like from the history of where things come from
And it's always cool to like just find that stuff out. And even like people like one of the favorite things is just like the transportation of the noodle, of like it being like a first thing that started in China but then being moved over to Italy and then having it being used and made with the wheat and grains that they found in Italy to like be like its iteration of the noodle that we know today.
Right.
It's still like a really fascinating thing if you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when I was in school, I was studying abroad in Thailand, and I was being taught how to make seafood curry there. And when I was making it, something clicked in it. I was like, this is gumbo. Because the way they do it is that they put down like their shallots, their galangal root, their ginger root, in with all their spices until it's nice and brown. Then they hit it with seafood stock and coconut milk.
Boom.
So it's just like, so if I just replace the spices with flour, add a little bit of fat, throw in the stock. Hey! But then if you think about it, it's like it's a seafood town in a tropical climate where you have people who are working very hard, who main staple of the cuisine is rice, and they're trying to work with what they got to make a fitting meal that lasts for a long time.
Absolutely. That's amazing.
Gumbo and curry, built the same way, just with local ingredients.
Yeah. That's how, barbecue sauce is to mole.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
It's exactly it. And it's cool to watch those roads like interconnect and just kind of like see the food web of history really is. It's so fascinating. And It's just like, I think that's one of my favorite things about food. If you want to talk about like my favorite things about cooking and food, it's just like the connections, man. And like you can have folks like a dude from like Midwest America, a guy from Texas, a girl who's raised in the Philippines who's also born in Virginia,
Right.
a girl who's from Florida, all eating like traditional Filipino food in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, man. It's so awesome, man. And, it's a sensitive subject for people, especially when, I'm trying to ask questions and, I'm a white guy from the Midwest and I'm like, what about the African influences? What about the Native American influences? And people just look at me like, well, you don't know shit about that.
Right.
I'm like, I want to know.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important to know, and it's not really spoken about. I was talking with a friend of mine who had been trained to make traditional Native American fry bread.
Oh, man.
And I was looking into like historic like Mexican Native Americans, so like talking about like the Aztecs and the Mayans, like those cultures, and the Native Americans in what we know as like the traditional U.S., and looking at those regional recipes and trying to incorporate that into what we serve at the restaurant. Ambitious for what Santa Fe was, yes. whatever. But
Right.
but it was fascinating to me, and she was like, "Look, I need to have a day where I show you like how to make the fry bread that I learned," and we never did.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I quit, it was like, I don't want to touch anything right now. I don't want to do any cooking classes. I'm done. But that is a thing that I want to go back to, because like Native American and like the people who were here in America first influenced everything we do. Like even the traditional things that we eat for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It's just like a big old Native American stamp on it.
And people don't think about it.
Not at all. And I feel like that's kind of like it's like hearing a symphony without any violins in it.
Yeah.
Like it's a major component of what we eat today that nobody thinks about. And I'm like, we need to talk about this.
Absolutely.
You know, in a way where it's like we got to give respect to the folks who were here first, and then we need to learn like where we come from, because I think that's a good question to ask.
Oh yeah, especially when our generation, we're losing all our grandmas and grandpas, and we're the ones that have to pass all these things on.
Seriously. And like I remember in my family, like when my great grandmother passed, my grandmother she has all of the recipes that my grandmother did. Because one thing in my family, and I've realized this, that echoes out in the way I cook, is that one thing in my family is that we like to take recipes and customize them. Like my grandmother makes the best oatmeal raisin cookies. Like, no respect to you, your grandma's oatmeal raisin cookies ain't shit. Nobody's oatmeal raisin cookies, they are all trash.
Right.
I will say it right now.
Yeah.
I will bet all of my student loan debt they are trash. But
oh shit!
I'm saying professional podcast call out by Chef Mike Marina.
Oh man.
But I remember, like I know for a fact, she worked on that recipe for at least 5 years. And like making it over and over again, changing the kind of butter that she did. How much butter did she use? Dark or light brown sugar? What happens if you add cranberries to it? What happens if you add chocolate chips and raisins? Like temperature-wise, like she broke it down. And there's like, she has this little, my grandmother has it's like a little house, like a little wooden house with all of her recipes written on index cards.
Nice.
My great-grandmother had a binder. All of the recipes off the backs of like cans and stuff with notes added in. And sometimes it's funny because it's like she has like one large box of Jell-O, and I'm like, they don't sell different sizes boxes of Jell-O now. What the
right?
Like, so that's a translation thing. But my family always likes to remix recipes. My mom does it. I do it.
Yeah.
And so in all, like, I have a book. I don't have it with me, of course, but I have a notebook of all the recipes that I've learned, the different additions that I've made. I know for a fact my mom does. She has her own binder, and that's one thing that I like really value. That's something that we really try to like keep maintaining. My grandmother is working on a family cookbook with everything that my family does, because like one of my great aunts, Belinda, she makes an amazing pecan pie.
Right.
When we used to all get together for Thanksgiving dinners, like that was the thing that she brought, was pecan pie. So she would have to bring like 2. Because the first one would be gone, and by the time the first plate hit, like people would get their pecan pie preemptively before they ate dinner. Like my grandmother would always do the turkey and the greens. Like I started doing. I started off with this like weird pudding thing called Watergate salad. It's like Cool Whip and like pistachio pudding. It's so Midwest.
That's great. Watergate
salad. Like, look it up.
Man.
It's a crazy looking thing. But it was one of my favorite things to make when I was little. Again, like, I don't know. Food's been like this weird thing that I've had this weird relationship with that's always been around. And I see it always being around. And at the end of the day, like, even if I don't make my full paycheck from cooking, even if at one point, something, God forbid, knock on wood, so if something happens and I can't physically cook full time anymore, I still want to make food for people.
Yeah.
Like when my mom is sick, she calls me up and she asks me for my hot and sour soup. I made my friend Shadow host bonfires, and I made these things. They're Christina Tosi. She was David Chang's pastry chef.
Yeah.
In her book, Momofuku Milk Bar, which is probably one of my favorite cookbooks. As a person who's not really a dessert chef, person who wanted to like kind of start making desserts, the cookbook was amazing. She has a recipe in there for a thing called volcanoes, which essentially
yeah.
is like a bread dough. And the way they make it there, it's potatoes, like a cheese sauce, and caramelized onions. I started building them with like stromboli ingredients. So I did like Italian sausage, a really thick like tomato sauce, and stuffing it with mozzarella cheese and topping it with herbs. And baking it, so it's like it looks like it's about the size of like a softball.
Right.
You bite into it, and it's filled with all this stuff.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Man.
So I've been, so that's like a thing that I do. And for Shadow's Bonfires, I made 2 versions of them. I stuffed one with curry. And I stuffed the other one because I had a friend of mine who was vegetarian. So I took a bunch of mushrooms. I cooked them down in mushroom stock. And essentially I made like a thick, like a mixture between like mushroom duxelle and like a mushroom ragu, but it had like a little, it was like a paste. It was like actually, you bite into it, you taste it, like you got like full mushrooms.
Oh man, that's amazing.
And I hit it with like a pinch of truffle oil. Not so you tasted truffles, but just to give it, you know, truffles have that.
It's like layer of different mushroom flavors right there.
Like I just wanted it to be, I wanted, like the idea that I took was Thomas Keller's like mushroom umami bomb.
Yes.
Like the truffle bomb.
Yes.
I wanted that to happen, but instead of it being like truffles, I wanted it to be like that wild earthiness of mushrooms.
Yeah.
Baked the 2 of them and like gave them out to everybody at this bonfire, like on a lark. And they
Mind's blown.
yeah, they try them and you might have to beat this out, but their whole like the new title for them is called The Organic Fuck.
Yes, dude.
They're like, these are the organic fucks, man. This is like, and like those moments, I wouldn't trade them for anything. And even if I'm cooking with one arm, man.
Yeah.
You don't got to give me a paycheck, I'd still do it.
Oh man, I talk to people about this. Is like, there's really only a few things that give you like that feeling of like an orgasm, almost where the eyes roll back in your head. Like one of them sneezing.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, that felt good, but I lost some brain cells.
Getting it out.
Yeah. That grandma's food that you taste it and you're just like, all of a sudden you just go into a time warp.
Right, and like you almost don't hear, and like your body's just reacting to things.
And then sex. So there's only 3 things in the world.
But and that's like, and like Anthony Bourdain talks about it, and that's what I love about food, man. Is that you can really like call back to stuff. Korean food's not done yet, but it's been a fun ride so far.
Cool.
Definitely. And
awesome.
It's been cool. Like it's weird thing to say, but like stepping away from cooking for about a year was probably one of the best things for me.
Sure.
Because at the time I was so like pigeonholed, tunnel vision. That's like, I gotta work in a professional kitchen. I gotta be an exec chef. I have to run a team. I have to own my own spot. I have to do. And it was like I was so focused on like what I had to do. I didn't think about what I wanted to do.
Right.
I wasn't even aware that there was like a disconnect.
That is such a huge piece in people's path to happiness in life. Is like just instead of just doing what you think you're supposed to do to get by.
Right.
Just like, decide, you know what? I'm just gonna do what I want.
I want to do what I want to do. And again, like I've had more fun cooking in kitchens now than I have in a long time. And like now I do like different iterations of stuff. I do a thing called, I call it the Top Chef Challenge. So, all right, long story short, I was on Guys Grocery Games on the Food Network.
Okay.
I had never been on a food game show before. And when I watched it, like, are you familiar with the show?
Yeah. I think I've seen the episode.
The Spice Masters episode? I do like a round off. You can see my butt crack and my belly. It's great. Like, watching, the fact that I can say I put Guy Fieri's jaw on the floor will always be like an accolade I put on my belt when I'm 80.
Yeah.
I'll be like, y'all don't know this, young kids, but there was this guy named Guy Fieri.
Yeah.
But, so to practice for that show, I did a bunch of mystery boxes for my friends. One thing, if you are a cook and you ask your friends to do mystery boxes for you, you're going to find out who really likes you and who just wants to fuck. Because, man,
that's great.
I think, like, my mom did one that was really dirty because I had to do a pasta dinner. So I started off with a pot of boiling water. And then, like, my ingredients were spinach, white mushrooms, hot sausage patties, truffle mac and cheese from a box, jalapenos, and Vienna sausages. Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, right? And she's sitting there just like with a big old smile on her face. It's like,
I can't wait to taste this shit.
Make it happen. Or like my one friends who they had to do like appetizer, like hand food, and they were like, all right, you can't use anything on the top shelf of the refrigerator or the bottom shelf. You can only use something in the middle. And on the top shelf was like crackers, tortillas, and egg roll wonton wrappers. On the bottom shelf were like flour, eggs, and like cornstarch. So I couldn't use any pre-made wrappings, and I couldn't make my own. On the middle shelf, and I missed it. I actually messed this challenge up. The middle shelf was cabbage. And they put it there for a reason, because I was like, I could have peeled off the leaves, blanched them, and done cabbage ones.
Right.
So I started doing these mystery boxes, and they're a lot of fun. Because the way I do it is that, like, as I'm cooking, because I was training to be on television, so as I'm cooking, I was like, y'all need to ask me questions. It doesn't need to be about what I'm doing, but I need to be able to double focus.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be able to focus on, like, what I'm doing and maintain that process while I'm talking to you about, like, where I grew up in my life and what this, like, someone was just asking me math problems. They're like, what's 8 times 2? 16. What's 9 times 3? 27. What's 8 times 4? Motherfucker. Like, but I had to get used to that. And now it's become a thing where, like, my friends do cooking challenges with me. Actually, I did a fun one where I had to do, like, a lamb dinner. I got, like, bell peppers, lamb chops, hot Cheetos, and frozen burritos. And then,
God.
yeah. And then my next challenge was I got spotted dick in a can, which is like raisin, like this.
Yeah.
It's terrible stuff.
Like British raisin pudding or whatever it is.
In a can, dude.
I've never even had that.
It's like cardboard sponge cake. Like, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And it was that. I had goat cheese, Bing cherries, and like 100% like dark chocolate.
See, all those ingredients together, like in my head, because I'm a chef, you know, I'm like, oh shit, we could do something with that. But
and that's the fun part. And for that dessert box, I'll never forget this one. Oh, there were avocados in it too.
Nice.
I actually did a challenge against my friend Renee, who is an amazing chef in her own right. She actually was in charge of the food, of maintaining like all the food courts and stuff like that for Jazz Fest for a while.
Nice.
And she went to Johnson & Wales Denver, so she went to my same school, different campus. And so like we were cooking together, so I even got to have like that dance that you have with other cooks as you're on the line, like jamming together and just like when everything's flowing right.
Yeah.
Like I got to do that cooking against a really good friend of mine that I also really respect as a chef.
Mm-hmm.
And I made like these goat cheese cherry tarts because I took like the spotted dick and I toasted it down. I cooked it down with butter and toasted it again to make almost like a cinnamon toast crunch crust.
Nice.
But like those challenges are so fun because my friends are twisted as fuck.
Yeah.
And they give me...
This is what you get.
Right. And it's just like, here's, salami, eggplant, preserved bamboo shoots in soy sauce, and squid ink in a can.
Oh, man.
Go for it.
Here we go.
I'm like, y'all, you have to eat this. That's like one thing. Like, somebody was telling me about a challenge they want me to do. And I was like, all right, like if you want to be a judge, keep in mind, you have to eat what
right, exactly.
Don't screw yourself over.
Mm-hmm.
But like those things are fun.
Yeah.
And even that, like I did that as training for the game show, but that harkens back to when I was at Tivoli and Lee. Because when we were slow, Chef Marcus would do that with us.
Mm-hmm.
Because we would serve like amuse bouches and stuff, so he would be like, okay, here's your ingredients. You have juniper berries, raw sugar. And we would have, like, because we inherited the space from an old school Asian restaurant, so we had like these weird like dry ingredients that we would just like find.
Right.
So, like tapioca pearls, juniper berries, dried shrimp. Go. You got to come up with an amuse bouche. You have an hour. Service does not stop because this competition is happening.
Right.
So you would still be jamming on your station, but you would also have to come up with a dish. Because if you didn't, we would talk shit about you because it was ridiculous anyway. So you'd be like, what was wrong? You couldn't handle it?
Yeah.
So, but even like being able to do that and being able to think on the fly, like that's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are awesome moments.
Yeah, man.
So Mike, just tell me one more time, like if someone wants to find you.
Oh yeah, if someone wants to get in contact with me, easiest way to do it is to search Chef Mike, M-I-K-E, Marina, M-A-R-I-N-A, like a bow marina.
Nice.
I have my own website, chefmikemarina.com. That's my email at Gmail. feel like there should be like a little jingle there. That's my email at Gmail. And then that's also my Facebook page.
Perfect.
And so that's the easiest way to get in contact with me. My email is always open. I am a one-person show, so I've gotten questions like, can you cater for like 200 people? And I was like, nah, but
right.
But I know folks who can. So I also kind of, one thing I like to do is like to connect folks. I like to give a lot of shout outs to local spots in the city.
Perfect.
So especially if you follow me on Instagram and you're wondering like, I'm hungry, I'm searching for this thing, drop me a message. 9 times out of 10, I know somebody who either does that thing or I know somebody who knows somebody who does that thing.
Perfect.
You know, it's all about connecting people with good food, even if it doesn't come from me.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah, man, I love it. Love it. I appreciate
awesome
your time, man. Yeah, I really appreciate being able to meet you and everything. So.
Likewise, dude.
So good luck with